you ever go in the woolly swamp, well, you better not go at night. There's things out there in them old woods make a grown man die of fright. There's some spots in this world that just seem to attract strange activity. Some places they just sort of draw it into themselves, and they challenge your own notion of reality. They challenge your notion of what's real, what's true, and not. And some of those places are in swamps or in forests far away from here. There's things that walk, things that fly, and things that creep around on the ground. But one of those spots is not far from here at all. Just south of here, near the towns of Chula Vista and Bonita, out in the desert landscape east of those towns, it's called Proctor Valley Road. And they say that the critters and all the ghosts, they get up and they walk around. But I couldn't believe it. I just had to find out for myself. I couldn't conceive it. I never would listen to nobody else. I couldn't believe it. Oh, I just had to find out for myself. There's some things in this world you just can't explain. You know, there's some things in this world you just can't explain. Now, Nancy and 4 of her friends from the soccer team in high school, they were driving out toward Proctor Valley Road, east of Chula Vista and Bonita. They were leaving soccer practice late. It was a winter afternoon, evening, one of these winter days when the sun sets real early. It was already getting dark. It was nice and cloudy and creepy outside. And they're driving along that road. Nancy, she was the smartest one in the group. She was the responsible one. And she also was the only one with the car, so it was her job to give everybody a ride after soccer practice every day. And so they're driving out. They always go to her best friend, or BFF, that's what kids call it. Her best friend forever, Amy, sitting in the passenger seat next to her. She always took Amy first, because Amy lived out on the edge of Chula Vista, in the new tract homes, nice new homes out in the hills on the edge. So they're driving under that dark, cloudy sky, and as they're driving along, one of the girls in the back, she said, "Hey, what was our homework for English? I lost my sheet the teacher gave out. We're supposed to write an essay." And Amy said, "Yeah, what was it?" And Nancy, driving, because she's the responsible one, she said, "I've got it right here." She pulled out the sheet the English teacher gave them, and she read it while she was driving. You should never do this. But she kind of looked at it, she said, "Some places speak distinctly, certain dark gardens cry aloud for a murder, certain old houses demand to be haunted, certain coasts are set apart for shipwreck." Robert Louis Stevenson.
Wow.
So we're supposed to write an essay about that. And well, Amy, sitting next to her, Amy said, "You know, that sounds just like Proctor Valley Road." Now, one of the girls in the back, she'd never heard the stories of Proctor Valley Road. So she said, "What do you mean, aren't we driving on it?" And he said, No, not this part in the city. I mean the rest of Proctor Valley Road. Once you leave the city, out into the desert and the countryside. Haven't you ever heard about the Proctor Valley Road Monster? And Nancy, she's the smart one, and she's the responsible one, and she's also the skeptical one. So just to herself, she thinks, "Oh, they're going to start with this again. They're going to start telling these ridiculous stories." She didn't say anything. She held it in. You see, when you're the smartest kid in your class, and when you're a little more mature than your friends, you can kind of develop a hubris about it and really feel this certainty that you've got the world all figured out. So they're driving along, and the girls start talking about it. Amy tells the story of the Proctor Valley Monster. She says, out in those hills, in the forest and the wilderness out there, there's this creature. It's not quite man, it's not quite animal, it's about 7 foot tall. He's covered in long, shaggy hair. And he roams around in the desert out there. And sometimes they say he chases people and chases cars. And Nancy, she's just holding it in. But thinking to herself, that's just Bigfoot. It's just the old Bigfoot story. And then one of the girls in the back, she says, "Yeah, I've heard too, but I heard that the creature, that he's got horns like a cow, though." And Nancy thinks, "Now you're thinking of the Minotaur. This is ridiculous." One of the other girls, she says, "Yeah, I've heard that this monster, it mutilates cattle. They find cattle with their entrails torn out. some of the ranchers out there in Proctor Valley. And Nancy thinks, that's the Chupacabras legend. You're mixing stories. And so one of the other girls said, I heard sometimes even he'll make electronic things in your cell phones. They malfunction when you go out into the valley. And Nancy, she thinks, now they're thinking of UFOs. They're mixing all these stories. So finally she speaks up. And she kind of slowed down the car and she said, you guys don't actually believe any of that stuff, do you? You really think there's a monster out there just outside of Chula Vista? Well, Amy said, you sound pretty sure of yourself, Nancy. Nancy said, yeah, I am sure. I'm sure there's not a monster outside of Chula Vista. And Amy said, all right, well, don't drop me off then. Today, don't drop me off. Just keep driving. Let's keep going down Proctor Valley Road, and let's go try it out. Because, you know, one of the stories says that if you go out there, once it's dark, and it was almost dark now, if you go out into those hills, park your car and turn off all the lights and wait, they say something's going to come up from behind. And Nancy said, all right, we'll try it. Will you stop talking about this monster if we go out and I prove that it's not there? Sure. So they didn't drop Amy off. All 5 of them drove off. And the other girls, they were kind of nervous. And the other girls, they're skittish because they kind of believe that this thing might be real. But you know, Nancy, she had that certainty. And so when you know that something's not there, then you can test it all you want and you can challenge it all you want when you know that there's nothing there to get you. She said, all right, we'll try. So they kept driving, and real soon, after they had passed Amy's neighborhood, all of a sudden it became real country, real quick. All those nice new tract homes disappear, and you keep on driving out. And even the radio, as they drove out down Proctor Valley, it turns into a lot of potholes, and then it just turns into a dirt road. And the car's really bouncing up and down on the shocks. And as they're driving the radio, it had been playing. But as they get out into that dusty part of the road, the radio starts to crackle out. But I couldn't believe she said to find out for myself. I couldn't conceive. No, listen to nobody. And then all the radio signal's gone. And Nancy, she kind of pulled out her cell phone, and she didn't have a cell phone signal either. Well, they drove down a little bit further. Pretty soon, Nancy said, this is as far as I'm going. My car's shocks can't handle this. It's a really bumpy road. And Amy said, all right, this is far enough. But turn the car around so we've got an easy escape. Turn it around first. So, okay, fine. Nancy's just rolling her eyes. So she turned the car around, and then she parked it. It's totally dark now. And she parked it, and turned it off, and turned off all the lights. Turned off the radio, it's just making that static. And then they just wait. And it gets darker and darker. And the girls in the back seat, they're kind of joking with each other, kind of giggling a little bit, because they're like, maybe we'll see something. And for the first time in the dark, and you can hear an owl every now and then, you can hear a cricket every now and then, but it's silent out there. And for the first time, Nancy starts to doubt that certainty. And she starts to think, if you're sure something's not there, then there's no danger in testing it, challenging it. But if there's even a slight chance that something might be out there, then it's a terrible idea to do a testing. And so they're all just sitting in the car, and the girls are starting to get bolder, and they're starting to make jokes about the Proctor Valley Monster. Somebody made some joke about the monster being horny or something like that, with the horns on its head. And they're making these stupid juvenile high school jokes. And then Nancy says, shh, wait, shut up. I think I hear something. And they all got quiet, sure enough. This rhythmic coming up behind them. And Nancy looked, and finally the clouds moved, and the moon comes out. She looks in the rearview mirror, and she can see something coming up behind the car. Something is running. And she looks, and sure enough, behind them, on the road, she sees this figure running at a full sprint. And it looks kind of like a man. It's running on 2 feet, but it's way too tall to be a man. Shoulders are too broad to be a man. And it's coming up faster and faster. And Amy, when Amy got a glance of it in the mirror, she said, turn the car on. Go, turn it on. So Nancy, she tries to turn the key and it's not starting. The car's not starting, just like in the movies. This always happens. She can't get it to start. And she looks in the rearview mirror, this figure is getting closer and closer. And as it gets closer, it drops down onto all fours and starts bounding at them like a dog without a tail. And it's running toward their car, and Amy's screaming, and the girls in the back seat are screaming, just screaming, go, move! And she's trying to start the car, and she can't get it started. Finally, boom, gets it started, and she slams on the gas, and this big cloud of dust erupts behind her, and they drive off as fast as she can. When they drove back to the neighborhood, went back to where Amy lived, they dropped Amy off, and none of them were quite sure what they'd seen, or if they had even seen anything. Maybe it was their imagination. So Nancy got out to open Amy's door and walked around the back of the car and screamed when she got there. She saw these claw marks on the back bumper of her car. Something had left on that car. Now, you can't see Nancy's car for yourself. I can't show you Nancy's bumper to show you those claw marks. And so maybe you don't believe the story of the Proctor Valley Monster. You can believe it or not. But one thing you can see, if you drive south of here, down to the town of Bonita, the Bonita Museum, you can see a plaster cast of a footprint that a rancher in Proctor Valley took of some strange, larger than human, stranger than human footprint somebody found out there. So you can go out there and see that for yourself. What you can also do is read the story in my book that I've written about this legend and other local legends from around here, and you can get those books out at the entrance. I couldn't believe it. I just had to find out for myself. I couldn't conceive it. I never would listen to nobody else. I couldn't believe it. I just had to find out for myself. Well, there's some things in this world you just can't explain.